HOA Karen kept harassing my family, unaware my grandfather owned the bridge for 18 months. They came after my family. Fake violation notices zip, tied to our fence. A security truck idling at our gate like it owned the place. And the woman behind it all, Denise Prescott, HOA president of Maple Hollow Estates, stood at our property line one morning, clipboard against her chest, and told my grandfather, "This bridge falls under our community's jurisdiction now. I'd start cooperating." Grandpa didn't argue. He never does. He nodded, walked inside, poured a coffee, and started waiting. Because Denise had no idea that the only bridge connecting 3 neighborhoods to the county road, the one her whole community depended on, my grandfather built with his own hands in 1962, on his own land, and he could raise it whenever he wanted. One night that October, in a hard rain, she found that out the hard way, stranded on the wrong side of Miller's Creek, completely and legally locked out. If someone tried to take something from your family that was never theirs, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. And if stories about quiet people finally standing their ground speak to you, stick around and subscribe. Here's how we got there. Walter Whitfield bought 18 acres outside Ashford Hollow in 1959, fresh out of the Army Corps of Engineers. He cleared the land himself, built the farmhouse himself, and in 1962, after a flood took out the old county footbridge, he built a new one, steel beams, oak decking, a hand, crank counterweight lift system he engineered himself. The county held a right of way easement for passage across it. The bridge itself, every bolt and beam, stayed his. For 50 years that never mattered to anyone. Then, in 2016, a developer built Maple Hollow Estates half a mile north, 200 homes, and HOA, and a private security contractor called Meridian Grounds Patrol. The fastest way out of the development wasn't through their own front gate. It was straight across our bridge. 300 residents started using it daily. Nobody asked. Nobody thanked us. Then Denise Prescott became HOA president, and within a year had issued 90 violations inside her own community for things like garden gnomes and mulch color. By year 2, she decided our fence line was her next project. The first fake notice came that April zip tied to our post, citing our hired hands lumber stack as an aesthetic violation. More followed. The tool shed, which had stood on our land 30 years before Maple Hollow existed on any map. Then our dogs, cited under a phrase Denise seemed to invent on the spot. The community aesthetic corridor. Security trucks started driving past 3 or 4 times a day, slowing just long enough to photograph our gate latch, our shed, even the old oak tree by the drive, as if the tree itself might be out of code. I drove out that weekend once. Grandpa called and asked me to bring a notebook. What worried me wasn't what he told me. It was how calm he sounded telling it, because he'd already started fighting back 3 weeks earlier. He'd mounted a trail camera on the fence post, logging every truck and timestamp. He'd pulled a certified copy of the 1962 easement from the county clerk. 4 pages spelling out exactly what the county could use the road, not the bridge, not the land around it. He filed a harassment complaint with the sheriff, backed by dated camera footage. He labeled a folder in his own block letters, Prescott material. Denise escalated, filing an encroachment complaint claiming our fence sat 14 inches over the county line, demanding a survey. Grandpa called an old Army buddy, a licensed surveyor, who spent 4 hours out there and found the opposite. Our fence sat 14 inches inside our own line. We owned more than she'd claimed, and almost as an afterthought, Grandpa had him run the bridge's coordinates too. It sat entirely on our land. Every beam. That's when I found the real key, buried in the HOA's own charter. Their security contractor's enforcement authority was geographically limited to the platted community boundary. Every notice Denise had ever sent us, every drive-by, every threat void. She'd been writing citations in someone else's dining room the entire time. Digging further, I found 2 prior civil complaints against her from a previous HOA job, both quietly settled, both describing the same pattern against older landowners near roads her patrols used. It wasn't random, it was a habit. By midsummer, our shortcut had become Maple Hollow's own problem. Every time Denise parked to run an inspection, traffic backed up 20-30 minutes behind her. 4 residents complained to the board, not about us, about her. Cornered, she pivoted, quietly proposing a security gate at the western edge of the development, right where the shortcut met the county road. Framed as safety, actually a choke point handing her physical control of the corridor near our land. That's when my mother, a retired county planning administrator, reread the 1962 easement line by line and found the sentence that changed everything. The right-of way was conditioned upon structure remaining in operable condition as maintained by the property owner, maintained by Grandpa, which meant he had the legal right to close the bridge for maintenance on his own timeline, and no HOA vote or gate proposal could touch that. In September, I spent a day in the county records basement and found the rest of it. In 2015, a full year before construction began, the developer had applied for a permanent secondary easement across our bridge and been denied in writing. They'd simply never told their future homeowners, or Denise, what the county had already ruled. Every HOA truck that ever crossed our bridge had done so as an ordinary member of the public, nothing more. I also found a quieter thing, a $31,000 transfer out of the HOA's restricted reserve fund to cover an unrelated legal dispute, a documented violation of their own bylaws, sitting in plain public record. We had everything we needed. All that was left was timing. Grandpa spent 3 weekends in October legitimately servicing the bridge's 60-year-old lift mechanism, documenting every real step the way he'd been trained in the Army. The work would also, conveniently, take the bridge out of service for a specific 80-hour window. He filed the maintenance closure with the county 5 days ahead, as required, and posted the notice on the railing. Denise found out and sent her attorney after us. I told him about the denied 2015 easement. He called her back and told her, professionally, there was nothing she could do, use the east entrance. She never told her board. She decided to handle it herself. That Thursday, she drove down, read the posted notice, and told Grandpa it wouldn't hold up. He told her, calmly, that he'd have the survey, the denial letter, and his maintenance log ready for any judge who wanted them. She drove off rattled, then posted online calling our closure a hostile act. It backfired. Residents who actually knew us pushed back publicly, including one who pointed out it was Denise's own truck that regularly blocked the road. Saturday night, the rain came in early and sideways. Grandpa finished his final documented checks, pulled on his old canvas coat, and raised the bridge exactly as its 60-year-old mechanism had always allowed. Our hired hand stood on the bank with a lantern. At 9:30, Denise's headlights hit the water where the deck should have been. She got out into the rain and stared. She called her attorney, who told her again there was nothing to be done. She called the county's after-hours line, then the sheriff's non-emergency line, and got the same answer both times. A properly filed maintenance closure isn't a police matter. More cars piled up behind her. Trying to turn around in the dark, she slid her truck into the soft shoulder and got stuck. Across the water, she shouted that this was deliberate obstruction, that she'd have Grandpa arrested. He told her the notice had been filed Monday, posted since Wednesday, and that the county had denied her own developer a permanent easement across this exact bridge back in 2015, in writing. The rain filled the silence after that. A deputy arrived, confirmed everything was in order, crossed the creek on foot to speak with Denise, and came back to tell Grandpa his paperwork was excellent. A tow truck was called for Denise's stuck vehicle. She spent the rest of the night sitting in it, alone in the rain. A local reporter who'd been quietly tipped off ran the story that week. The raised bridge deck against the dark sky, the postage notice sharp and legible, Denise's truck stuck in the mud past midnight with its hazards still blinking, under a headline about the limits of HOA security authority. It was thorough and sourced. The denied 2015 easement, the reserve fund irregularity, a quote from Grandpa's attorney about the geographic limits of enforcement power. Other homeowners from nearby developments started reaching out with similar stories of their own within days. Denise resigned within 2 weeks, citing personal reasons. The gate proposal was withdrawn. An outside attorney confirmed the security contract should have been limited to the community's own boundary from the very beginning. The reserve fund violation triggered a formal state review, and by the following spring, the HOA had voluntarily repaid the funds and amended its charter to explicitly bar enforcement outside its own plat line. What came next surprised me. The HOA's new board chair called Grandpa directly that spring, not through a lawyer, just a phone call, to ask if there might finally be an honest, working relationship. She said she was sorry it had taken this long. Grandpa said he'd be willing to talk. Together, our family and the HOA drafted a real limited easement that spring, proper scope, a fair annual contribution toward bridge upkeep, everything written to reflect reality instead of assumption. As a gesture of goodwill, Grandpa donated lumber from 2 fallen oaks, so the community could build picnic benches at a small creek access park nearby. By summer, kids were catching crawdads in the shallows, where the fight had once nearly boiled over. That fall, Grandpa and I started a small scholarship for local students studying land, use planning and property law, funded in his name. At the announcement, in his good shirt, coffee in hand, he said the only advice he had for anyone in a fight like this was to go read the old documents nobody bothers with anymore, the ones sitting in a courthouse basement for 50 years, written carefully by people who knew someday somebody would need them. So that's what happened when someone tried to fence in the wrong family's bridge. Not a lawsuit, not an eviction, a resignation, a rewritten charter, and a woman who learned, alone in a stuck truck in the rain, exactly where her authority actually ended. If you've ever gotten a notice or a threat from an HOA, before you pay anything, before you respond at all, go pull your own original recorded documents from the county recorder's office. Not the summary they hand you, the real filing. You might find your own sentence waiting there too. Tell me in the comments, have you ever pushed back on an HOA and won? If this story hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for next week's. The bridge is still standing. And now, so is the peace that finally respects it.